That's the reason that we're discussing Serie A. And again, to your jaded sensibility, you don't find this interesting, even though it now riddles and twists your own context. JJ Bull, the contradict. There he is.
I just say what everyone is the opposite.
Anyway, Serie A. Listen, the reason it's exciting, JJ Bull, is because John's going to tell you. We're about to have the fourth different Serie A champion in 4 years, John. That's Napoli, who did lose to Lazio over the weekend, 1-0. That's only their second defeat of the season so far. But they are currently 15 points ahead of Inter Milan in second place. They're doing a terrific job there, John, aren't they? And I'm sure that their team's going to be rifled and picked apart. And then maybe next year there'll be another winner. What do you think?
Yeah, I think a lot of this comes down to the fact that the teams who the leagues that aren't the Premier League are struggling to match the Premier League in terms of the finances, and that does lead to a little bit more of variability in certainly in the Serie A's case. Yeah. It does help that the main team in Italy and Juventus have been riddled with corruption and lost points here, there, and everywhere to keep things on the level playing field a little bit as well. But I do think it is a question that needs to be asked whether or not the hyper financialization of football has actually made it less competitive in the long run.
Well, they spent in January, I learned from a Tifo illustrated script, the whole of Serie A spent 30 million euros, which is less than Bournemouth spent in January.
We've said it a lot on this podcast that teams like AC Milan and Napoli are struggling to compete with teams like Bournemouth in the transfer market as well. Yeah. There's a real appetite among players to get into the Premier League by hook or by crook. I never use idioms until I'm on this podcast. I get into this studio.
Cows come home.
You were saying earlier the business end of the season.
I feel like I'm on the Archers. You stick me in front of a microphone and I'm like,
start making all these weird sound effects. Don't you?
But it means you have to look for value in players when, like, you'll find different ones that other players wouldn't take a punt on. Like Kvaratskhelia is maybe an example where you get him for quite cheap because you don't know how a Georgian international is going to perform in the higher, like the Premier League. So the difference now with the Premier League teams is that they can buy the ready-made player who comes in and just makes them really good. Yeah. Whereas Bournemouth can compete to someone who might be on that level, but they have to pay 30 million for them. Whereas Napoli can snap someone up like Kvaratskhelia and do a bit. Spend a bit less on them, but then players like Lobotka has been really important to them this season, and you've got like Min-Jae Kim's been really, really good. He was very cheap as well. There's value to be had in the transfer market. You don't just because you spend loads of money on someone doesn't mean they're good. Yeah, I think.
But I think as well with a team like Napoli, when you have a player like Victor Osimhen, you have a massive advantage over your opponents. And like again, that's not to say that they didn't do great talent acquisition, etc. But that when you can bring in a player at that level and it just gives you that advantage over the rest of the teams, it can decide a title as well. But yeah, Napoli have been absolutely brilliant this season, like one of the most exciting teams in Europe. So it's been nice to see them come through. And it's, like we had AC Milan last season playing a very different brand of football to what Napoli are doing as well. There's definitely that variability there, which makes it a fun league to watch. And
all in all, that exciting.
I decided I like it now. I decided I like it.
Now you're into it.
The top four is changing all the time as well. Like we said, we had Juventus in there. They lost 15 points, dropped out, and then we saw AC Milan drop out again this weekend and were replaced by Roma. Lazio doing quite well. Atalanta are always there and thereabouts. So.
Lazio 48 points. Lazio could finish second.
Yeah,
very changeable. And of course, Milan losing to Fiorentina over the weekend as well. There, Monza 2-1 Empoli. I just wanted to say that.
If you like this video, please consider subscribing to the channel. The Athletic is home to some of the world's best sports journalists, including journalists dedicated to each Premier League team, so every fan gets the coverage they deserve, not just the big clubs. And you can try it for free now for 30 days. See the link in the description.